It gets set up, and today we're going to paint two very simple landscapes for beginning watercolorists. Now remember to hop in that chat and send us some of your feedback and give us your thoughts. So what do you need to paint these simple landscapes? Well, I have a couple of recommendations. First, let's look at what we're going to paint. When I say simple, basic, yes, and you're going to be able to add a lot of your own artistic brain and wonderfulness to this, but let's look at what we're going to do. So we're going to do two. We're going to do one that's kind of like a valley or a field, and then the other one will be more of an ocean. We're not going to worry today about a lot of brush strokes. We just want to learn how to lay down this color to achieve a very simple landscape. So what do you need? Well, you're going to need your watercolors. Whatever kind of watercolors you've got are fine, but you are going to need some watercolor paper. I highly recommend that you use watercolor paper instead of just regular paper. And you're going to see as we lay this down, paper likes to buckle. So that leads us to the other thing that you need. And I highly recommend that you tape down your work. Now I'm using painter's tape, but you could use masking tape, other kinds of tape. There's even an artist tape. It's a little overpriced, but you can still use it. Now, I recommend that you put it down on some kind of a board. You can even tape it to your table if you need, but a board is much better because you can move it as you do your art. So I have cut a piece of paper in half. So this was a 9x12 sheet of paper that I cut in half. So now I have two different sheets. I'm going to paint two different landscapes, right? So this first one that I'm going to paint is going to be this one over here. And what I'm going to do is to paint this first one that's going to be more of our valley. And then the next one that we'll do our water. You need to have 2 cups of water. Always when you do watercolor, have 2 cups of water, one for cleaning and then the other one to try to keep clean. Although I get it dirty all the time, it happens. Get your paintbrush, whatever size you feel best with. I'm going to paint with the 10 today. Paper towels, they are great. And then of course your paint. So I'm going to turn this around right now. The first one we're going to paint, we want to draw a horizon line that's kind of lower at the bottom. So here is the half point of my paper, and I already drew this with a pencil, and I used a straight edge. You can just draw it on there if you want, but I wanted to make sure that I drew my horizon line. That's going to kind of tell me where to stop painting. All right, now the other thing that you're going to need, and I forgot this a second ago, when I said your paper towels, we're going to pull this apart so that we can remove some of it to make clouds. All right, so let's start. Now you can see what colors that I have here. These are the colors that I want to use. I don't want this to be paint by numbers. I want this to be you making choices. Yes, I can teach you techniques, but the artistry comes from your own beautiful artistic brain. All right, so I'm going to get some water. And I am going to lay it down to get my paints kind of what we call charged. Now, if you have paints that are already in a palette and they're dry, you should spray those down with a water spritzing bottle. We call that charging our paints. I would say at least 15 minutes, if not more. And that just gets them kind of nice and juicy. It's going to get them at the ability to produce their most vibrant colors. So we're going to paint blue, and then we're going to go into a pink, and then we're going to go into a yellow. We don't want this to be thick. We don't need this to be that butter consistency. We want it nice and light. So I've got a little bit of this cobalt blue, and I'm just going to mix it nice and light. Okay, just like that. Give this a rinse, and then I'm going to do this with my rose color. I want it to be a really light pink. Just picking a little bit of this up. Now these are done with tubes. Tube paint gives you very vibrant colors, but if you don't have that, you're still going to do that with the palette that you have if there are more of those dry paints. Let's do this last one, a little bit of cadmium yellow, just like that. And what we're going to do on both of these is make our sky first. We're going to do something called a gradient. We're going to go again from blue to pink to yellow. All right. So I'm going to lay this down, and I want to lay down water first. So I'm going to get some water on my brush, and I'm going to lay that down all the way down till I get to that line. If you have a bigger brush that you would like to use for this section, you absolutely can. A lot of people like to use a flat brush when they're laying down a wash. I really like to use a mop brush, but today I'm just going to use my round 10. Making sure I get this whole area saturated. You don't want puddles. Puddles make everything look really weird. So you can kind of look at your paper. Like I can see right here, you can see I'm moving my head. I have a strip right here that I did not get. So I'm going to come back in and make sure I do that. Look at your paper and make sure it's kind of got a glisten. If you look at it with the light, you might have to tilt it a little bit. But that is how you can tell. Now, if you lay down too much water, you can use your brush to pull it up, or you can use a paper towel. Don't overwork it, just get it laid down. We're going to start at the top. Okay, I'm going to grab that blue. And you get to decide how deep you want this blue, how vibrant, okay? So I'm going to start at the top, and I'm going to pull this down. And when your artist brain says to you, hey, let's switch to the next color, switch to the next color, which is going to be that pink. Okay, it's okay if you have stripes in it like that. Remember, you're painting a beautiful sky. Skies have all that lovely texture. Let's switch to that pink at some point, and then we will do the yellow. So I'm grabbing that pink. Look how nice and watery that is. Now, do you see how I started below and I'm pulling it up into this blue? It's going to kind of give us a little bit of a purple. We're not pulling down into it, rinsing this out. And let's do that with some of this yellow. Remember, start at the bottom and pull up. So I'm going to go along this line right here. Now the yellow, we don't want to use too much. We don't want it to get too freaky yellow and be like, that's not natural, right? Now, if you don't like the stripes in it, you can add some more brush strokes to it. Now I'm going to take my paper towel before this dries. Tear it off. I want that nice jaggedy edge. And I'm going to put some clouds in this thing just by laying this down. Big clouds are closer to you. Smaller clouds are further away. You can get a new paper towel, you can turn it, you can reball it up, however you need to do to get those clouds in there. Now, it's very difficult to do this if your paint is too dry. We're doing a nice little wash here. We don't have to worry about it being really, really perfect, right? We just kind of want to have these colors melt together. Just be lovely. You can do some small ones, you can do some big ones, just play. All right? Super. And so we're going to let this dry. We're going to do another one, but I'm going to flip this around. Okay, so once we've painted those clouds, we're going to flip this around and do the other one. Now, I don't recommend, or you don't have to do this on the same board. You could do it on two separate boards. I just did it for this because it was, it was convenient. But I kind of like doing it on two separate boards and moving them out of the way. But this works. Now, what I just noticed right here is when you do this, sometimes you make mistakes. So this line that I have right here at the bottom really should be more at the top. So let's grab an eraser and fix that. Now, this is a great time to tell you about this eraser. Best artist eraser you can find. It's Prismacolor's Magic Rub. I love this for all of my art supplies. It just works really well. Now, anytime you're erasing on watercolor paper, don't just erase it so much that you're going to pull apart those fibers. Be gentle with it. The other thing to think about too is when you have watercolor paper, you want to be careful not to touch it too much because the oils of your hands get on there and it sometimes can mess up how the paint lays down. So just be very careful. So sometimes I kind of like to do this or even have a brush, and that will help get some of that off a little bit. Use my sleeve. Yeah, I know. Let's redraw that now, shall we? So you can use a ruler if you want, or you can just freehand it. Let's do this one similar to that one, but let's do it at more of the top right here because this is going to be an ocean. But we are going to start with the sky. Okay. Now we're going to cover this up just like we did with the other one. So there's no need to worry about erasing that for now. All right, we're going to do the same thing, just like we did with the sky for the valley or the mountains, whatever you want to call them. If you want to use the exact same colors, you can, or maybe you want to change the place of where this water or the ocean is and you want it a little bit more Caribbean, so you want to add a little bit more blue-green, you can do whatever you want. In this example that I did here, I did use a little bit more of a blue-green. So what I'm going to do is just grab some of that blue-green over here, get a little bit of water, a little bit more of that cobalt blue in there. It's just going to make it look a little bit different. All right, we're going to do the exact same thing that we just did. Let us lay down that water. All right, just plain old water on this first section. I also know that when you're starting watercolor and you have these lines right here that it can be a little bit intimidating as you get closer to that line. As you're starting the watercolor journey, be forgiving, give yourself a little bit of grace here and there to mess things up. That's how you learn. But don't worry about it being a perfect straight line either. Just paint. You will, those skills will come. Learn the techniques. You will get better every time you paint. Again, I'm going to check this, tilt my head a little bit. Make sure I don't have too much water down. As I look at this, I don't want any standing water. I have a little bit of standing water here, just a little bit. So what I'm going to do is just take my paper towel, kind of just dab it. Yep. And then I might spread that out just a little bit better because there is texture in this paper towel, and I don't need to have those little flower textures in there. Okay. So we start at the top, blue to pink to yellow. Okay, here comes that blue. Now remember, you're working in a little bit smaller space. You're starting to see your paper buckle a little bit if it's not taped down. And hopefully you're learning the value of taping down work. Let's grab a little bit of that pink. And then let's do some yellow. And if these colors are not vibrant enough for you, like you look at mine and you say, man, I need more vibrancy in there than that, do it. Absolutely do it. This is your art, my friends. So now I'm laying down that yellow, right? Same kind of deal. Let's grab our paper towel. Let's pull that off. And let's put in some clouds. I think taking something like this and saying, okay, I'm learning landscapes. I'm learning how to do these color washes or these gradient washes. I'm learning how to do skies and clouds. Painting them several times is how you're going to get really good at this. Just play. Play around, have fun, try different things. Do a landscape that you can see outside your window. One that you dream about, one that you saw years ago. Just play. That's how you're going to get better. All right, so this one is finished, and what we need to do is make sure for the next step that these pieces are very dry. So you have a couple options when you're drying work. Letting it sit naturally is such a great thing to do. I think that art teaches patience. I think that art is about just taking time to live in the moment and not focus on everything else that's going on in the world. And if you can do that, just grab some tea, go for a walk, let this dry naturally. I really encourage that. Now, I will also be very honest. This is life, and sometimes we like to speed things up. So having a hair dryer or a heat gun is really going to make this process faster. And sometimes we get in that art zone and we want to keep painting. So you do what you need to do. I'm going to grab this. Here we go. And I'm just going to dry these pieces. So for this next step, we want to make sure that it's nice and dry. This is a heat gun. You can buy these really cheap. They're not very expensive, and it dries things. And yes, it's kind of like those heat guns that get really hot, so you want to make sure that you keep it moving. But another thing, like I said, you can do is a hair dryer. Sometimes we have hair dryers and then we want to upgrade to a newer, more fun model. Turn that one into a art one, or go to a thrift store. Sometimes you can find those. Okay, so we're gonna start with this one, and this one is our valley one, right? And so what we wanna do is we're gonna paint some valleys in here first. So let's talk about the colors that we need. And I am gonna show you how to take 2 colors and make a bunch from that, all right? So let's look at this. You can see that we have lots of greens in here. We have yellows, we have some blues in here. And what we're gonna do is lay down this color, lots of different greens in there. So how do we get those greens? All right, we're gonna start with just plain water, and I'm gonna switch to a different palette right here. All right, I'm gonna reignite this green. So this is a green that I used earlier. Now, I'm gonna get a little bit more and do another one here. I want like 2 to 3 different greens. Let's grab another one, put it over here. You can see I grabbed more paint, right? We wanna increase that value. All right, now I'm gonna give this a rinse. So how do I take these greens and make them different? Well, we tend to think, oh, okay, let's add a little white to one. Let's add a little black to one. Maybe you even think about adding a little bit of blue. No, we're going to try something different. So there's this thing called a color wheel. And on that color wheel, you have 2 colors that are opposite one another. Red and green are opposite. What they do is they make some of the most beautiful browns when put together. If we go 50% red, 50% green, we're gonna get that brown. But what happens if we do 10% red to our green? Well, let's see. All right, so I'm gonna take this red, all right, the red over here. I'm gonna put some over here just so you can see this a little bit better. Here's our initial green, right? This is a very vibrant, almost not natural green. That kind of green doesn't really occur in nature. If I take some red, just a little bit of red, and I add it to this, you can see how I went to brown. Let's add a little bit more green. What I'm going to be able to do with this is make some of the most brilliant and interesting greens. Look at that one, okay? And I will put that on to this here in a second. That's an olive green, like a nice olive green. Now rinse my brush and grab some more red. Now remember, this is all about complementary colors. I'm gonna grab some more of that red and go into here. Now you don't always have to go to brown. That's just kind of showing you how if you do a lot of red, you're gonna go to brown, but it still has a little bit of green tint to it, right? I'm gonna rinse that out and add a little bit more green until I get the exact color that I want. Now this is where I really recommend that you do test swatches. All right? Test swatches. Now I don't have a lot of paint right here. You might want to do it a little bit more. And then here is my last green. Look how vibrant that green is, right? Let's add just a little bit of red, just a tiny bit of red, not as much as I have been. And what that's gonna do is, I like to say it's gonna chill that green out so the green isn't so vibrant and crazy. Now the other thing that we do is we paint light to dark. Opposite of acrylic paints, opposite of oil paints. We start light and we go to dark. Those go dark to light, all right? So we're gonna want a lot of water with this. Let's grab our brightest green. That means it's not the darkest green. And we're going to paint in just like a little valley here, right? We're gonna go up and down and we're gonna go over this line. All right, we're gonna go up and over that line. You can go up as high as you want. You can come down as low as you want. Just make sure it is staying within that line. I'm just gonna add some green in here, right? Nice and watery. And then I'm gonna grab some of that darker green. And add that in there. And then I'm even going to grab some blue and some yellow. Just lay that in there. This is called wet on wet. And we are just playing. There's no way to tell you, lay it down here and lay it down here. That is just not fun. If you're following this recipe exactly, I want you to just grab it and lay it down. We're laying down that blue. Grab some yellow. Put some yellow in there. And then we're going to do some more green. I'm going to grab some yellow. And I know at first this looks obnoxious, right? But it's all going to bloom into each other and be absolutely stunning. Let's put down some more green. As long as this is wet, you can keep adding. Notice I'm not dragging the paint. I'm just kind of tapping that color in. I'm going to make up some more that's a little bit more vibrant. Let's start adding that in. Now we got to let this dry again. So when you get to a point where you feel happy with this, when your artist brain is satisfied, and for some of you, you're going to see where you want to add a few more peaks and a few more valleys, and that's fine. For those of you that are very beginning, we're just making some peaks and valleys. I want to put down a little bit more blue in here, just touching that in. And you can always come back and do more if you want. I have painted a very light version of this today. Okay, let's let that dry. So I'm going to flip this around again. And now we're going to kind of do the same thing we just did, but we're going to do it with water. So I'm going to flip this around again. All right, making sure I don't knock anything over. Now, you got to figure out what kind of blue you want. Do you want to do it with a cobalt blue? Do you want to do it more with this blue-green? We're going to do the same thing. We're going to make those hues starting light to dark. The other thing that you might want to do is have some white caps in here, and you're just going to kind of draw in this little funny shape. I'll draw a big one in right here, and we're going to think about it just kind of being, you know, jagged at the bottom. I kind of call it a shaky hand. It's kind of going into a V, and then across the top it's going to be a little bit rounded. That's a white cap. Now, unless you are painting a hurricane, you don't need that many waves. You don't need that many white caps, okay? Maybe do one back here that's kind of tiny, same kind of shape. And then maybe one over here that's kind of medium. I would not do more than 3 unless you're doing a hurricane, like I said. But again, this is your art. If you want to have 52 waves in this, you better believe that you can do that. You don't have to put any waves. Maybe it's a very, very still lake. Even though some lakes have waves, don't they? Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to paint this in layers. We're going to start light, and then we're going to go dark. So let's take whatever blue that you want to use, and I'm going to get another paper towel off here because I go through these pretty quick. And let's do this. So we're going to paint down here. I'm just cleaning out my brushes. Sometimes I get excited and I forget to really give them a good cleaning. You want to make sure you get all of that out. And I'm going to go into here. I might even kind of clean it out in this cleaner water. It just helps. And then I always dry it on a paper towel just to make sure I've got all that color out. All right, so we're going to do this blue. Remember, we want to start very, very light. So I'm going to take this blue. I'm going to go back to this palette just because it's a little bit cleaner. Lay this blue down, right? But I want to do a very light version of this. So that means I want it really nice and watery. What I want to do first is make sure that I have lots of water on this. All right, now you notice we didn't lay down water first like we did on the sky, and that is just so we can have a little bit more control. Now, what I am going to recommend when you do this first color is not to come so close to your horizon line. Not yet. Right now, let's just lay down this very light color going around these white caps. If you paint over that white cap a little bit, that's okay. It is okay. Sometimes we lay something down and it disappears because we get very happy with our brush, and that is okay. Be very, very forgiving of yourself. Even if you're not brand new to art, you still need to just enjoy the process. The product will come. Okay, notice I'm keeping this pretty wet. Make sure you're painting all the way to your edges. If you have too much water as you're painting near those edges, it will puddle a little bit and kind of give you this bizarre look. So try not to get all your water, setting on those edges. Oceans also, or water, tend to be darker towards the horizon line, and they get lighter as they come down. So if you're pulling this down and it's getting lighter, that's okay. Notice I'm just going up and underneath these white caps. We're really focused on the landscape version of this and not so much on all these little bitty details. The details are just fun. Okay, let's mix a little bit more of that color, but let's make it a little bit more intense, right? A little bit more vibrant. So I'm just adding more color. That was a lot of water, maybe 50% water. No, it was more than that. Let's say it was 60% water, 40% color. So now let's increase that. We're going to start near the back, and we're just going to pull this in. Remember, this is wet on wet. If you're not able to pull these colors and get these blooms, it just probably means you need a little bit more water. If it feels very dry, that's when you need a little bit more water. If you're getting huge, humongous puddles everywhere, it means you're using a little too much water. Now notice when I'm pulling this, I'm not painting as much as I was. I'm just kind of laying down some lines here and there. They're going to bloom out. This is one of the joys of watercolor. But see how I'm leaving some space in there? But I am making sure to come up underneath these white caps. Right? Now, you can always erase that line before you start painting if you feel like that's something that's standing in your way. But I believe because of the way we're painting this, we can kind of paint over those, over those pencil lines. Okay. Making sure I pull it all the way to the edge. Let's do it again. Let's make it darker. So what we're doing is we're just layering it. We are making sure that every time we do this, we're getting darker. I'm using less water, more paint, right? Still watery, but it's more pigment. Okay, let's do it again. This time, as you come across, I'm going to go up here a little bit more. Let's not do so many lines. See how I'm just doing a couple here and there? Coming up, some of this white cap that I did has disappeared, and that's okay because I can just kind of reshape it with my brush. You do want to make sure underneath your white cap that it's nice and dark. Okay. And you can layer this as many times as you want. You can keep getting darker and darker. Or when your artist brain says that's enough, then say, okay, that's enough. You can also let it dry and then come in and add some more lines coming through it if you'd like. And if you want to do one more layer, you absolutely can. But remember, you don't need as many lines. It's going to bloom out and do its own thing. Let me do one more darker layer. So you can see every time I add, this gets thicker and thicker. We are a little bit thicker than melted butter right here, right? But I am going to have to add a little bit of water to it and then add a little bit more color. Okay, I'm going to come in here one more time, really trying to get close to that horizon. Now, if you go up and over that a little bit, that's okay. I'm going to show you something here in a minute that you can do to fix it. See how I'm just laying down less and less as I come around? You still want to focus in underneath your white caps. Just like that. It's the part you really want to make sure you get. Okay? Just play. All right, so let's let that one dry. Let's flip this around and let's add some trees. Now, if this is not dry, you're going to want to dry it either naturally or with your heat gun or hair dryer. So let's flip this around and let's see where we are. Again, I don't recommend touching it. I need to give it a little dry. Okay, so now that this is dry or dry-ish, it's okay if it's still a little damp, but we don't want it too damp. What we're gonna do is add some really simple trees. We need the ability to have them nice and thick, but we also want them to be able to switch up colors. So let's take our green, okay? This nice, beautiful, vibrant green. Remember how we did that earlier? We just add a touch of red. I've got a little bit of this pink right here, which can act like red. And I'm just going to add this. Remember, we want to go light to dark, but we can't have these super, super thin. So I want them to be vibrant. So I've got my paint on here. And all we're going to do is just paint some little trees. Okay? Just super simple like this. You can make them really tall. You can make them really short. And you can make them in bunches. You can do them across the whole thing. Do you see how I'm just using the tip of my brush? That is all. You can have one that stands by itself. Just whatever your artist brain tells you to do today. Okay, I'm going to do some over here on this side as well. You can think about them kind of being in these clumps, little clumps of trees. And then the next thing that we're going to do is put another clump of trees on, right? However, we're going to make them darker. All right, so while that's drying, and again, you can dry it, you can make it dry with your little heat gun, or you can just let it dry naturally, learning some beautiful patience in life. Okay, I'm gonna let that dry just a little bit. And while I do that, I'm gonna flip back around here to my ocean. So we're gonna paint a rock formation, but we need some brown. So let me get some brown that I have right over here. And I'm just gonna squirt this out on my palette. Somewhere where you have a clean palette would be nice, right? Okay, there's my brown. You could even add a little bit of yellow to that brown if you don't like it. Again, use a test strip, play it out, see how you like that brown. Don't feel like you have to settle for the colors that are actually in your palette. And we talk a lot about that in the watercolor theory class, so come take that with us. All right. Here we go. just kind of like we did with our valley over there, right? We're going to do kind of the same thing here, but we're going to do a rock formation. Nothing too complex. So this rock formation just can have big sections, right? And then it can even get some smaller sections in there. Just make sure your ocean is nice and dry here, or your water, because if it's not, you're going to have this brown come down and invade your ocean. And although that might be something you want to do in a future painting, let's not do that today. Okay, so I'm just going to have some rock formations. You can leave some white space in there to reflect light. You can even come in and add a little bit of yellow. These can go up as high as you want. They can come down as low as you want. We're just having a really fun time playing and enjoying the process. You can even do one over here that kind of doesn't meet up. You know, maybe there's like a little inlet that people could swim through. I do that a lot when I'm painting. I make up little stories sometimes of what I see. Makes things really fun. Okay, and then that's your rock formation. Come in, play around with shadow. You can add some more just by tapping in color. Look how I left some white space in there. That kind of looks like where the sun might be hitting it. You could even come in with some gray, some green, some blue. And if you get it in your water a little bit, it's okay. All right. There we go. Let's go back to our forest or our valley, if you will. Oops. I'm going to rinse this out. And we're going to do some more trees. Now, these trees are not going to be perfectly dry, and that's okay. You can either make them 100% dry or go on top of them when they're a little bit damp. So I'm going to go back to my green, and I'm going to just keep adding a little bit more red, all right? I do want to make sure that they're a little bit thicker than that. Okay, I'm going to grab some of that pink or some of the red. Remember, they're the opposite of each other on the color wheel, so that each time we add another layer, they just get darker. All right, so here we go. We're just going to lay that down. It's a little too watery. I'm just going to tap it on my paper towel and just add this in. And you're going to keep doing this over and over again until your artist brain is satisfied that you have these wonderful, areas of trees. This reminds me so much of my grandparents' farm every time I paint this. You can come down a little bit further onto your valley. If you want, you can paint some trees down here as well. Okay, and I'm not going to finish this side out yet. I'm just going to stay over here so you can kind of see what I'm doing. So all I'm going to do the next time I do this is I'm just going to keep adding that red or red pink to this just to keep making it darker and darker. Look how that green just comes out darker. Giving it a little touch, right? Now I'll do it over here since this is a little bit more dry. This I need to let dry a little bit, but you can see how much darker this one is, right? And just keep adding. And there's no like, oh, I need to grab really tight and I need to paint these beautiful trees. That's not what this is about. We're just laying down some color to make these very nice, simple landscapes. One last little thing I want to show you. And that is how to make a bird. Just a sweet little bird. Now, when we were young, I don't know if you did this, but I used to draw little letter M's for my birds. This is kind of similar, but we're going to do V's, right? So you can do this with whatever color you want, maybe a black. I'm going to use this brown because it's right here. I'm going to use the tip of my brush. Now, if you want to switch to a smaller brush, you absolutely can, friends. Play around until it feels good. I do want to pull a little bit of this out. If you feel a little uncomfortable painting so small, use a marker. Why not? Okay, I'm going to come in here. I'm going to just do these tiny little V's like this, right? Thinking about a bird. Do they travel together? I probably shouldn't use brown. That looks a little weird, so use black when you do it. but I just want to show you with what I've got right here. I always like painting these, and then I like to paint one back here. The little bird that's just having a hard time keeping up with the others. And you can fill your whole sky with these birds. Put some over here. Just make these paintings your own. Take the skill or the technique that I've taught you and make it your own. That is how you're going to improve as an artist. And that is all, my friends. So thank you so much for stopping by and learning how to do simple landscapes on your watercolor journey. Go create something beautiful.